Confession time. I'm not a Hall player. I hold world records in every other Frontier facility, but not Hall. This should have been a simple challenge. Pick a 0 IV Pokemon, walk to gold print, and show just how easy the Hall can be. I can promise a gold print, but this is almost the distorted nightmare of my original vision for this video. Before we even dive in, what is the Battle Hall? It's one Pokemon, one-on-one fights. Select the type you face each time, build a win streak. But each time you face a type, you level up that type and the opponents in it become stronger. However, we can abuse the way that type selection works to build specific counter sets for each type. That's where the true beauty of the Hall as a single Pokemon challenge shines. If you want to know the easiest way to get gold, use Garchomp. It's boring, it's almost cliche, but for a reason, it works. In fact, the shark is coming. I cannot spend more than 12 hours total collecting footage for this video. If I hit 9 hours and I don't have gold print, we will throw away our hero and I'm going to use Garchomp to win. The first idea was actually to use the Pokemon Staraptor. It hits hard and fast and has good coverage. It does struggle with some matchups, but I can always run the move Swagger. Then I remembered that the 0 IV challenge actually bans the use of single-use TMs or tutors. But hey, do you know what learns a load of reasonable TMs? Gyarados. The thing is, actually, let me share a quick story on this. The facility's legend Turscan once pointed out that while Mega Evolution adds about 100 base stat total to a Pokemon, running 0 IVs subtract 96. This is almost a kind of reverse Mega Evolution then. And that puts Gyarados at Kecleon level stats with 0 IVs. So in tribute, my Gyarados is getting the nickname Gyaraderp. She has 9 hours to earn the gold symbol, or the shark replaces her job. Gyarados must beat all 17 types to get the gold symbol. And here's the key, we want to lose early. This is because losing early means that resetting will be more efficient, which means we should hit the goal of 170 wins faster overall. So the question is, what is Gyarados' worst type matchup? The answer is a little bit surprising. Ghost. Yes, Ghost is worse than Electric. Let me explain. Early rank Ghosts are easy. Gyarados can handle these without any special preparation. But later on, any Pokédex legal Ghost can show up. Some of the worst are Rotom, which has faster speed than a max speed Gyarados. It survives Waterfall and Bite, it has Thunderbolt, it has a Patea Berry. Dusclops and Drifblim, both also survive Bite and both can also paralyze Gyarados. And finally Gengar, which is faster and has Hypnosis to make the whole game essentially random. The Gyarados set I decide to use for Ghost goes for max attack and max speed, with Bite and a Focus Sash. I add Icy Wind to beat Rotom, and I add Waterfall to beat Spiritomb. Payback would have been very useful here, but it's banned under the 0 IV rule set. In ranks 5 to 8 in Ghost, which are shown on screen now, I do run into both Drifblim and Dusclops, but rank 7 Drifblim is too weak to survive the Waterfall, and rank 8 Dusclops, while it does have a chance to paralyze me, doesn't manage to get the luck required. Going into rank 9 is a good time to bring up an important question some people might have, which is how on earth is a Dusknoir at level 23 legal? The answer is, it isn't. The Battle Hall opponents can simply field any of their potential Pokemon from any potential level, and this means you can't get too smart by trying to avoid something like Dragonite by coming in at a level below when it usually would evolve. Rank 9 Dusknoir was not a threat, but rank 10 Mismagius is. If this Mismagius fully paralyzes me with Thunderbolt, then I will simply lose and have to start again from 1. I do at least survive a crit with the Focus Sash. In fact, this match is a mini preview for how the entire challenge is going to go. I can reduce the risk of losing, but I can't set it to 0. A 31 IV Gyarados would obviously outspeed and easily beat this Mismagius without getting hit. In fact, a 15 IV Gyarados would also be able to do that, but the 0 IV Gyarados is so slow that I effectively have about 65 base speed. So these kinds of games where I cannot do anything to avoid being slower are going to be quite common. Ideally for Ghost, I could equip an item like the Choice Scarf, which would allow me to outspeed most of the Ghosts. Unfortunately, this comes at the cost that Gyarados can't one-shot Rotom, and therefore I would just lose to Rotom unless I flinched it with Bite. I now need to pick the next worst type, and this one isn't a surprise. Electric is bad, but not quite as bad. Max Speed, Max Attack Earthquake is a fairly good problem solver here. The early rank Electrics go smoothly. Gyarados is able to leverage the massive raw stat advantage it has over these Pokemon, and most low rank Electrics have no way of fighting back, but there's a reason why Gyarados is level 45 now. I need different moves to beat Electric, and that means the anti-Electric Gyarados has now been tagged in. Let's quickly go over the 4 biggest threats in Electric. First up is Rotom, which is almost the same as it was in Ghost. Zapdos is immune to Earthquake, but we can solve this with an Icy Wind into a Waterfall. But I'd rather not give Zapdos a 5% win if Icy Wind misses. For that reason we'll be running Dragon Dance for Zapdos instead. The Dragon Dance requirement is why my Gyarados is now level 45. Manectric is a menace. It's faster than me and it runs a Focus Sash. The only way past this is to run Icy Wind to break its Sash and then to outspeed it. So Icy Wind is back on the set. Once again, Gyarados must run a Focus Sash itself to beat this. In fact, I actually went into a Manectric at rank 6. This is rather lucky because I'm faster than it when it's only rank 6. But, of course, Manectric is still able to win if it does paralyse me here. But I don't get unlucky, and I'm able to move on. The fact that Manectric showed up at rank 6 means it won't show up later. The deadliest opponent in Electric is actually Luxray. Or rather, I should say, the deadliest opponent is specifically Intimidate Luxray. Luxray can roll either ability, but if it rolls Intimidate, I must either crit or flinch with Waterfall. Earthquake won't be able to KO this, and Focus Sash won't save me from the Quick Attack on turn 2. As we go through the haul, there'll be more cases like this, opponents that I simply can't beat without some good luck. This is simply an acknowledgement. Zero IV Gyarados cannot be favoured to beat every Pokemon that can show up in the haul, which is pretty much every single Pokemon in the Pokedex except for the bans like Groudon and Kyogre. Ranks 8 and 9 of Electric end up being Magneton and Electivire respectively. These are both on the luckier end of opponents that I can run into. A really important benefit of doing both Ghost and Electric early is that a lot of the Ghosts and Electrics that can beat Gyarados are also monotypes. This means that they can't show up again later under other types. For example, in Flying I could run into a Zapdos again, but Luxray and Manectric for example could obviously only show up under the Electric type. Rank 10 Electric was always going to be scary. This is the highest level Electric that I'm forced to run into. I end up running into Raikou, which is a slightly scary prospect. I can again lose here if I get paralysed. Dodging 10% bad luck a few times is fine, but if I have to do this too many times in the course of 170 battles, I almost become guaranteed to lose. This Raikou ends up missing Thunder, which is quite lucky, but mostly I'm just glad to leave Electric and Ghost behind me and not have to worry about them quite as much going forward. But it's not all good news. If I bring up the timer for the total time taken so far, we're almost up to 20 minutes and it's only been 2 types. This means going all the way to Gold Print is going to take around 3 hours. Or, in other words, I don't have time for many losses within that 10-hour time limit. Now Ghost and Electric both beat Gyarados in quite simple ways, but the next type up is difficult for a different reason. In fact, this type is famous for forcing players into more creative sets. The third type I'm facing is Dark. Now, in a tightly edited YouTube challenge video, it would be rather stupid to go through the entire list of all the problematic Dark types right now and torpedo all of the story's momentum. The first main problematic sets I'm going to talk about are Sableye, Honchkrow, Mightyena and Drapion. At minimum I need a strong neutral move to hit these and reduce their chances of getting a lucky win. In other words, I need at least one of Bounce, Waterfall or Outrage. Shifty is also a problem. It lives every move except Bounce and it fires back with a White Herb Leaf Storm. Sharpedo has a Focus Sash, and it's faster than Gyarados, and it has Rough Skin. Cacturne can survive Outrage and runs Thunder Punch and can win via crit or paralysis. Crawdad can run the ability Hyper Cutter and also runs a Quick Claw with max defense investment. It will live 1 Outrage but not 2. Absol has a Focus Sash and can KO me with a crit, although I can be faster if I go for a max speed Gyarados here. Skuntank can win with either a crit plus poison or a crit into the ability Aftermath. Viritomb has Patea Berry, Dark Pulse and Icy Wind to beat me. Umbreon is one of the absolute worst though. It can easily out-heal me with Moonlight, and it runs Confuse Ray and Leftovers. Umbreon is therefore a big limitation for what I can run on Gyarados. Remember, I can't use Toxic on Umbreon because of the ability Synchronize. Houndoom runs a Choice Scarf Dark Pulse itself, but will die to any reasonably strong attack such as Outrage. Tyranitar can survive my max attack Waterfall, and its Stone Edge will OHKO me even if I run Sash because of the Sandstorm. Weavile is just evil. It runs Focus Sash and it's faster, and it'll always get 2 chances to crit or freeze me. On top of this, it also has a priority move itself. Drapion can also win if it rolls the ability Sniper. Earthquake won't KO Drapion. That's a bit of a mess, but it's fairly obvious that I do need the Focus Sash and I will need max attack and max speed. It's also fairly obvious that I'll have to rely on the moves Bounce and Outrage for most of my damage here. There's only 2 move slots left now, and I still really need a solution to Weavile, Sharpedo, Tyranitar and Umbreon. Sharpedo and Weavile are fairly high priority opponents, and so I'm going to run Icy Wind for both of them. For Tyranitar, the best move to run would be Aqua Tail, and for Umbreon the best move to run would be Rest. And so my compromise is to run the move Rock Smash. This is a bit of a strange inclusion, but it does get 2-shot on Tyranitar, as well as being a safe long-term option against Umbreon. I think this is the first and the last time which I'll ever use the move Rock Smash in a challenge like this. The early rank Dark types don't cause any major issues, but as always I'm usually expecting more resistance at the later ranks. Dark rank 8 ends up throwing an unexpected curveball at me. I had obviously done a lot of planning for Dart, but, well, let's just see how the battle went. Rank 8 ends up being the Pokemon Mightyena. Mightyena is mainly threatening because of the move Swagger. Because I'm locked into Focus Sash, there's obviously nothing I can do to counter this. I need to not get unlucky. But instead, Gyarados goes full Gyaraderp here. I can't really blame Gyarados for hitting itself in confusion. After all, this Gyarados is the weakest possible Gyarados that can exist. And I can imagine that Gyarados maybe has some self-esteem issues about that. I could complain about bad luck in this match, but that would be the wrong lesson. Luck is an unavoidable part of Pokemon. I can try and minimise it, but I can't get rid of it. And I know that this challenge will require good luck as well as good strategy to get through. This setback is bad news, but it's not too serious. Losing match 28 out of 170 is a lot less painful than losing later. But the clock is ticking and we've lost almost 30 minutes at this point. I'm forced to redo Ghost and Electric again, and luckily Gyarados doesn't get any losses here. It's time for the Dark rematch. This time Mightyena actually appears again, but it's rank 5 and I can easily OHKO it. I also take out Skuntank, Crawdont and Sableye. None of these are threats on lower ranks. I then take out the Focus Sash Sharpedo on rank 9, with the Icy Wind strat making this easy. But now it's time to talk about a special haul strategy. This was only discovered very recently, with my video covering how the haul generates Pokemon. I don't expect you to watch that, but the basic idea is that the haul is not fully random. We also know that the haul prevents duplicates from appearing. This means because we face Sharpedo on rank 9, Sharpedo can't appear on rank 10. And also the Pokemon in the haul work on a bit of a queuing system. You might assume that Sharpedo's 4.2% is evenly spread out amongst all other Pokemon after it disappears from the queue. However, this is not what happens. Instead, Sharpedo's 4.2% gets entirely donated to its next neighbour, Cacturne. So the thing is, Cacturne is now suddenly much more likely to appear on rank 10. I would much rather face Sharpedo than Cacturne. Sharpedo is much less threatening to me as it doesn't have Thunder Punch. So what can I do? Well, there is actually a way around this. I can choose Rest. Not rest to make a cup of tea or to take a break. Rest to reset the game's memory. The game forgets that I've already faced Sharpedo. This puts Sharpedo back in the pool of Pokemon that can be chosen for rank 10, and it decreases the chance of me finding Cacturne on rank 10. This makes rank 10 slightly less dangerous and gives me a better chance of winning. For the rest of the video, I'm going to refer to this as either the nearest neighbour rule or the rest trick. It's going to be critical in making this run somewhat possible to do within the time frame. It's now time for the most infamous type in Haul. Water. There are so many water types in Gen 4 that there's no way for me to specifically prep for every single one. So instead I have a high level guess at a logical set. I decide on Outrage and Earthquake for the two main damaging moves. And I also decide that since so many water Pokemon in the Haul are not invested in speed, that I'm also going to avoid this and instead train Gyarados in only HP and attack. But I'm still going to stick with a Focus Sash because so many Pokemon can still one-shot Gyarados. I consider Thunderbolt, but the gap between Gyarados' attack and special attack is so large that often Outrage and Earthquake will do more damage than Thunderbolt. Icy Wind is almost certainly better. I know that I need it for Sharpedo if nothing else, and I also know that a number of opponents will outspeed me, and it's 3 damage to turn that around. In fact, Icy Wind is perhaps the most important move in this entire run. The final move I'm going to run is also very important and comes back to the weird Battle Hall rarity mechanics. There is one Pokemon in water that is really common, and that is Slowbro. In fact, this thing might as well be the Battle Hall mascot. It runs Citrus and it's very bulky, and it's very common. Gyarados can quite easily lose this. I run Bite for Slowbro specifically, and a few other matchups where I know that 30% flinch would come in handy. Slowbro does show up in water and it's not a surprise. In fact, Gyarados does a Gyarados move here and crits Slowbro. This instantly removes the chance of losing. I'm almost impressed. The rank 10 water opponent ends up being Tentacruel. This is not a free win either, as Bright Powder is quite notorious for causing losses. Overall, water went quite well, maybe suspiciously well. I didn't run into anything that I was really scared of, such as Relicanth, Ludicolo, Slowking or Lantern, but these all have a chance to show up again later. I should mention one more Haul mechanic here. Quite a dangerous opponent you might have thought of is another Gyarados. Obviously the other Gyarados would not have low IVs, but actually the Haul does respect your Pokemon. It will not bring exactly what you bring. So this is one threat I was safe from. Next up is my least favourite type. It's Ice. Everyone loves the freeze mechanic, right? The set for Ice is actually quite easy to design. Gyarados gets a lot of mileage from max attack and max speed and the Focus Sash again. Most enemies are handled by either Outrage or Iron Head. Cloister is a lot more common than it is in water, and it's a really big problem. I'm running Thunderbolt specifically for Cloister. I don't really need a 4th move for Ice, although Waterfall does help a bit. After the early ranks, I run into Dugong around 6, and I optimise this for using Iron Head first for the extra flinch chance. I then run into Jinx at rank 7. I actually get frozen here, but I get a lucky defrost almost immediately. This is the biggest risk with Ice. I run into Piloswine at rank 8. Piloswine is surprisingly scary again because of the Bright Powder. Luckily I don't get a 10% miss here. After I beat Piloswine I do go for the rest trick. I do not want to face Piloswine again. Rank 9 I then find Lapras. This is a pretty favourable 2-hit KO with Outrage. I must go for it immediately because it has rest and it can both crit, freeze and 2-hit KO me with its own Blizzard. So as a fun fact here, Pokemon HP bars are 48 pixels long. This is what 1 out of 48 pixels looks like. And indeed, I think we can, yes. If we zoom in, I can confirm that this 1 pixel is indeed mocking Gyarados. I would love to do something about this, but the only way to give Gyarados more attack is by increasing its attack IV, which I can't do. Losing at match 49 is a much more serious setback. That's 50 minutes spent just on this run and I'd also lost earlier. I can't afford to lose that many more times. I have to run back through every earlier type. Luckily I don't get any major mishaps along the way. By the nearest neighbour rule, when I do return to Ice rank 9, I've just run into Piloswine, Abomasnow and Glalie. This makes Frostlass super likely to appear. And indeed, Frostlass does show up on rank 9. Ice rank 10 is actually a much bigger problem than Ice rank 9. Luckily, Battle 50 isn't Ice rank 10. Battle 50 is always going to be Argenta 1. Argenta just ignores the rank and the type that you select. Instead, she'll just use a Pokemon with the same base stat total group as you, and she doesn't follow any type rule. She could bring anything. This is good and bad. It means I get to skip Ice rank 10 for free, but it also means I must face a potentially much harder battle. My choice of doing Ice 5th is very intentional for this reason though. My set for Ice is quite a good generalist set. It should be good against most things that Argenta could bring here. However, Argenta is going to bring a 31 IV Pokemon at the same level as Gyarados. This is a serious disadvantage for Gyarados of course. There are a lot of Pokemon I absolutely don't want to see Argenta send out here. But the biggest threats are pretty much everything under Electric and Ghost. Ideally it's either slower than Gyarados or at least weak to Waterfall. A very recent discovery for Argenta 1 is the fact that her AI is actually bugged. Argenta is meant to use Smart AI no matter what, but instead Argenta is always going to inherit the AI of the rank that she replaced. I'll talk more about how the Smart AI works in Hall a bit later. Argenta sends out Azelf. Azelf has a bizarre Hall set that involves Flame Orb Trick. The reason why this set is so weird is the behaviour of the Smart AI in Gen 4. Facade is bugged. The AI should check if its own Pokemon has the status condition. Instead, Game Freak Code steps in and checks instead if the enemy has a status condition. That's why Azelf is always going to Trick on turn 1 and it's always going to Facade on turn 2, even though Zen Headbutt does do more damage. Overall, this is a very good matchup for Gyarados, and I take a somewhat easy win. I don't like putting a number on it, but my guess is that Gyarados' overall chance to lose against Argenta 1 is probably around 50%. The good news is that this matchup occurs a little under an hour into the run, although with the earlier losses, my margin for error is shrinking. Argenta 1 does award the silver symbol, but we're not really interested in that. We're going for gold with Gyarados. Now you might be thinking that the end of this run should be much easier than the start. After all, haven't we done all the hardest types first? But it's time for me to come clean. There is a Hall mechanic I've been hiding from up until now. You see, as you beat each type, the level of future types goes up. If you were paying close attention, you might have already noticed this. We did Ghost first, and Ghost rank 10 was level 24. But Dark was third, and Dark rank 10 was level 25. As the run goes on, Gyarados is slowly going to lose more and more of its level advantage. This is also the true complexity of preparing a Pokemon for the Hall. Let's take Ice as an example. I did Ice 5th here, so enemy Glalie were never going to live Iron Head and they were never going to outspeed me. But if I did Ice as the 7th type or later, suddenly enemy Glalie turn into a massive threat as they can beat Gyarados at a higher level. The exact same thing is true in basically every single type. There are Pokemon that only become threats at higher levels, so managing the type order is extremely important. It's not just about doing the hard types first, it's about recognising which types become much easier or much harder if they're done earlier or later into the challenge. This means if you enjoy planning and team building and reviewing various sets and thinking about how to beat enemies, the Hall might be your favourite facility. But let's return to the Gyarados challenge. What does this mean for Gyarados here? Well, put quite simply, the hardest matches are still ahead of me. On that note, it's time for another infamous type. This is Normal. Normal is obviously also another massive type, but the main problem here is that normal types are just too bulky for Gyarados. Intimidate is very common, yes, but on top of that a lot of Pokemon here are just too fast and too defensive, and therefore cause a lot of problems. The thing is, Gyarados doesn't learn a fighting move. My strongest move here is Waterfall. Or is it? My first two moves definitely need to be Waterfall and Icy Wind. In fact, with Icy Wind I only just beat Staraptor, and once again Focus Sash is needed as anti-crit. But let's focus more on a matchup like rank 10 Licky. Licky is a good example of a defensive Pokemon that hits me way too hard. The rank 10 normal is going to be level 26 because it's the 6th type. Waterfall does about 40% to Licky and I will faint 2 Thunder Punches. So without a flinch or a crit, I would lose. What should I do? The strongest move that Gyarados learns is not actually a Water type move. You might be thinking about Giga Impact, but no, Waterfall into Giga Impact won't KO Licky. Instead we need Flail. A max power Flail hits at 200 power. That's basically exactly enough to kill a level 26 Licky after Waterfall. This isn't a coincidence, and it's also why I'm doing Normal 6th, among some other reasons. For example, I also need the power against Pokemon such as Ursaring. But there's a problem. You see, after Intimidate, Thunder Punch from Licky and Ursaring does not guarantee max power Flail. I naturally live these attacks with too much HP to use Flail. And so, the final move is actually Endure. On the surface it might seem a bit stupid to run both Focus Sash and Endure, and beneath the surface it might also be a bit stupid. Honestly, I'm not sure this is the optimal set for Normal, but it is a set I've landed on and it is pretty good against most of them. After the early Normal ranks I run into Stantler on set 7. But Stantler doesn't use Thunder against me. Why? Well, the AI for the Hall is slightly strange. You see, ranks 1 to 3 are always random AI, ranks 4 to 7 are basic AI, and ranks 8 to 10 are always going to be smart AI. Except, once again, this is not quite true. There has recently been yet another bug discovered in the Hall. On rank 7 specifically, if you run into a trainer whose name begins with an I or a J, they will have smart AI instead. I'm not going to go into exactly why this is. It sounds like a ridiculous playground rumour bug, but this one is actually true. Game Freak. Regardless, let's talk about basic and random AI. They really are very basic. They're just checking that the move isn't useless. Stantler can use any move that isn't useless therefore, and it doesn't have to use the move Thunder. If I had run into this Stantler on rank 8, then it would have always used Thunder against me. This adds another layer of complexity to how I play the Hall. I don't actually want to face Stantler after rank 8, but before rank 8 I would want to face it, since it then locks itself out of appearing later. Because of this, my decision to use the rest strategy or not is very much going to depend on exactly what I see before or after rank 8. If you correctly followed all of that logic, you can probably appreciate just how complicated this gets. I am lucky with the normal types that follow up though. I get Kangaskhan and then Girafarig on ranks 8 and 9. These are very good opponents to show up. I seem to have avoided most of the worst normal types that can possibly appear here. I want to avoid Stantler, so I don't actually do the rest trick. Who do I get on rank 10? Well, it's Licky. I actually laughed when this showed up. It's pretty likely to show up, but Licky is the main reason why I'm doing normal so early. For most other types, the Pokemon that I specifically prepare for are unlikely to actually show up, but it has happened here in normal. So I finally get to show off my preparation using Waterfall into Endure into Flail to win, as only this set of moves can beat Licky. But I think it's nice for Gyarados to overcome the odds in a tougher matchup. Nice, very nice. Well, that's 2 hours gone. I have to start again, all the way back at 0 wins, and go through all the types I've faced up until now. In fact, doing this I actually lose once again on Ice, so that's another 40 minutes gone. I'm over 3.5 hours into the challenge when I get back to rank 10 normal. This time Slacking comes out. I would lose quite badly to Slacking, except this is another upside of Endure. I can simply Endure on every single odd numbered turn. Slacking is therefore completely unable to do anything. Without Endure I'd have a massive risk of losing to the move Counter. This is good revenge for Gyarados against normal type, but unfortunately the time I've got left is very limited. I probably only have 2 big attempts left to complete Hall with Gyarados. The 7th type is going to push the rank 10 opponent up to level 27. This 7th type is Rock. Most Rock types are quite easy, as you might expect from a Pokemon that can learn both Waterfall and Earthquake. There are 4 quite serious considerations in Rock though. First up is Credilli. Rank 10 Credilli directly wins via Ancient Power, so I must run Iron Head for it. Bastiodon will always be a problem with Quick Claw Thunder. There's nothing I can do about this apart from running Focus Sash and hoping for no paralysis. Relicanth is also a big problem. It not only runs Max Bolt, but also it runs Shell Bell to potentially stop the Earthquake 2-hit KO against it. There's nothing I can do here except hope that it doesn't show up on too late a rank. In many respects, this is the big reason why I need to do Rock 7th. Regirock may seem like an even larger issue. I can't two-shot Regirock with Waterfall because it runs a Citrus Berry. I can't try to avoid Citrus Berry by using Earthquake on turn 1 either. There is a solution to Regirock, but it's quite ugly. I need a slight power boost from the move Aqua Tail, so that requires level 35 Gyarados. Despite all of this preparation, I never actually run into any of these Pokemon, and so my ride through Rock is quite easy. At this point in the video, I'm guessing you have realised something. Dual type threats are a pain. We're doing Psychic next, and that means that Slowbro can return. Of course, when we faced Slowbro earlier it was in water, and its level was lower. The second time we face any Pokemon like this, it's going to be much deadlier, and we're going to see a lot more examples later in the video. The biggest trap in Psychic, however, is definitely Wobbuffet. I must run Dragon Dance to beat Wobbuffet, and luckily Dragon Dance is also very helpful against both Girafarig and Starmie. Obviously the biggest threats are both Latias, Metagross and Cresselia. Metagross's Quick Claw in particular is very annoying here. Luckily the Latias are quite rare. Cresselia should be a much bigger problem than it is. Luckily it's lonely natured, which means it does get free shot by Bite despite leftovers. I'm also going to run Giga Impact for a one-shot kill on some of the more physically frail Psychic types. After the early Psychic ranks, I went into Wobbuffet, Alakazam, and finally Slowbro. This is actually perfect because rank 7 is the last possible rank where I can face basic AI, and it also means then that I will block Slowbro from appearing in the smart AI rounds as long as I don't use Rest. And I run into Medicham, Gardevoir, and then finally Grumpig. This is a very pleasant set of opponents to run into for Psychic. Like Rock, it went really smoothly, but it's always better to over-prepare than to under-prepare and be surprised by a loss. The next type is another type that I can't afford to delay any longer than this due to the inherent risk. It's Fighting. Gyarados does learn Bounce, and Bounce is very strong, but it's also only 85% accurate. This means optimizing for Fighting means doing as few bounces as possible. Indeed, Dragon Dance, Waterfall and Earthquake do solve most of these matchups. I'll instead focus on the remaining few. Heracross is a lot more threatening than you might be thinking. It's naturally faster than me and can have the ability Swarm, as well as having the generic chance to win via a crit. I do have to bounce it, but I probably do get 2 bounce attempts. Breloom sucks a lot more. If I miss bounce here, it can actually kill me despite my Focus Sash, and this is because Sky Uppercut can be used during bounce and will hit Gyarados during bounce. Breloom can also obviously paralyse with Thunder Punch if I miss bounce. I am aware of the threat of both Poliwrath and Machamp here, although because of the way the Hall mechanics work, they are both quite rare, and they're not too scary to run into. Hariyama is probably the overall worst Pokemon to face though. This is a very strange scenario where a lower level Hariyama is going to go for Fake Out, but a higher level one will not go for the Fake Out and instead go straight for Thunder Punch. This actually makes the lower level Hariyama more deadly than the higher level ones. On top of this, I have a 10% chance to get screwed by Focus Band. With the early fighting ranks done with, I run into Monferno at rank 8. This might surprise some of you. Why is Monferno appearing at such a high rank? It's time to talk about how the Hall actually splits up the Pokédex into different ranks. Each Pokemon is placed into a group based on its base stat total. Group 1 is below 340, Group 2 is 340 to 440, Group 3 is 440 to 500, and then Group 4 is 500 and above. Although obviously in Pokemon base stat total isn't perfectly connected to how strong a Pokemon is, this is a pretty good approximation by Game Freak, and with how many other things in the Hall are broken, I must say that this isn't a bad one. Speaking of rank 9, my rank 9 opponent ends up being a Technician Hitmontop. It must be Technician because it wasn't Intimidate. This is actually a small trap. The best line here is to use Dragon Dance first. This denies Hitmontop the ability to activate its Select Berry, and it also means I won't miss because I don't have to rely on Bounce. The next Pokemon in the fighting queue after Hitmontop is Breloom, so I do the Rest Trick here to try and avoid Breloom. I'm not covering every single time I do the Rest Trick, as it gets a little bit repetitive and also it's a little bit of a boring mechanic, although it is quite fun to optimise beforehand. And indeed rank 10 fighting ends up being Hitmontop again. This would have been Breloom without the Rest Trick. So I'd like to thank Hitmontop for showing us in action so well, and also for being a good opponent that has no chance of beating Gyarados. The total timer here is just under 4 hours, so I'm not doing too badly. The 10th type is the beginning of a slow descent into insanity. This is Poison. If you've been keeping a tab on the Gyarados sets, you might have noticed that every single time I've mentioned it having a Focus Sash. There was actually one set before this which wasn't Focus Sashed, and that was Psychic. Psychic Gyarados actually ran a Citrus Berry, but it just never came up, so I didn't mention it at the time. Anyway, there is no more Focus Sash in Poison. Instead, we need to run a choice band. This forcibly solves a lot of dangerous matchups and employs the basic idea that Gyarados can't get unlucky if Gyarados doesn't get hit at all. That said, there are two really big problems in Poison. First is Weezing. It survives Choice Band Waterfall and it has Thunderbolt. Luckily, Hall Weezing does not actually run any special attack investment, so I live a Thunderbolt if Weezing is only level 28. But it remains a scary opponent as it can crit or paralyze me. There's also Gengar. Gengar returns from Ghost with a vengeance. Poison Gengar will be a higher level though, and is also therefore much more deadly. But luckily for me, it's a lot rarer in Poison than it is in Ghost. I only actually need the moves Waterfall, Earthquake and Bounce. This Gyarados does also have Icy Wind, and I'm going to explain why much later on. Overall, Poison goes pretty well, which is not surprising. Poison Gyarados might have the lowest chance of losing out of every single Gyarados type. But I did have to do it early. If I leave it any later, then Vileplume and ironically even Golbat also become quite big problems. And Weezing becomes almost unsolvable, due to the increased levels that will happen at later enemy types. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, why does the Choice Band Poison Gyarados run Icy Wind? Well, Type 11 is actually the answer to that. In Type 11, I'm going to use the exact same Gyarados as I just used for Poison, except I am swapping out the Choice Band for Focus Sash. But what is Type 11? Ground really should have been done much earlier. Piloswine, Gastrodon, Whiscash, Garchomp and even Flygon will be much safer at lower levels. Doing Ground 11th means that the last Pokemon is going to be level 29. The problem is, the earlier types are even more important to do at lower levels. I'm stuck with Ground as 11th, and it's not ideal. I do get some pretty good luck in the early Ground rounds though. I went into both Quagsire and Gastrodon before Smart AI has kicked in. Then come Gligo and Steelix, which are two really easy wins. Last is Swampert, and this is much deadlier than it looks. I cannot safely dodge Torrent here, because 2 Waterfalls and an Icy Wind is not guaranteed to KO this. Therefore Swampert is rather scary as it can lower my accuracy and then rest it up. After a Muddy Water accuracy drop, I would only actually have to miss 2 or 3 attacks in the next 8 or so to lose the match. But Swampert doesn't get the accuracy drop, and I go on to quite easily beat this. I am very pleased to have Ground go so smoothly, but this is also entering the home stretch now. There are only 6 types left. You might be able to guess the order of these. The 12th type ends up having the scariest single opponent in the entire hall for Gyarados. This matchup is absolutely terrible, and it's also almost impossible to fix within this type. So why am I doing this type so late? Well, it's because the level I face this opponent actually doesn't matter. It's always going to be the same level of deadly. The type is Grass. Grass suffers from a similar problem to Fighting, where against some opponents I simply must hit Bounce. Ludicolo is probably one of the biggest of these. The moves Ice Fang and Outrage do most of the help here. These aren't that strong, but I'm giving Gyarados a choice band for Grass, as there are still too many opponents that can survive the attacks. And most Grass types can't do enough damage back to Gyarados to hit it into Focus Sash anyway. For the final move, Iron Head is basically required. Credilli and Abomasnow were both problems in Rock and Ice earlier respectively, and I should respect their ability to get a lucky win even more now. So what is the super deadly opponent I'm so scared of in Grass? Is it Tangrowth? Tangrowth feels like the obvious one. It has huge defense and it's very annoying. The Choice Band Ice Fang does hit Tangrowth hard enough, even at rank 10. I wouldn't choose to face Tangrowth, but it's not the big threat here. The big threat is Group 4, and therefore can't appear before rank 9, and its name is Meganium. The headache here is Meganium's Focus Sash combined with the move Counter, and also combined with the fact that it'll always be Smart AI. I'm running Choice Band, which is absolutely the correct item for every other Grass type, but against Meganium specifically, it leaves me open to being one-shot by Counter. I do have a bit of counterplay myself though. Instead of using Outrage or Ice Fang, I can use the move Iron Head. I would have 2 chances to flinch or crit, but if Meganium successfully uses Counter on turn 1 or on turn 2, then I will lose. Although the AI is quite likely to use Counter, it will not happen every single time, and therefore I can't solve this problem by running a special move. So, who shows up on rank 10? Is it Meganium? Leafeon is yet another opponent that has a small chance of an upset here. While after Intimidate activates, I always KO it first, Leafeon is faster and it has a scope lens. This means its Leaf Blade has a 25% chance at a critical hit. Zero IV Gyarados will never survive that crit and I'm running Choice Band, not Focus Sash. This creates a choice. I can kill it in one shot with Bounce but risk the 15% bounce miss, or I can try and kill it in 2 shots with Ice Fang or Outrage. Outrage can't miss, but if I get crit on any of those turns then I will lose. The mathematically better option is of course Bounce, which is what I decide to go for. But let's remember a small detail from earlier in the video. I meant it when I said that these small chances of losing can add up quickly. My frustration seeps in a bit here, because not only does a 31 IV Gyarados never faint to that crit, but a 31 IV Gyarados can actually outspeed that Leafeon as well. If there is a single battle that demonstrates a gap in power between a 31 IV Gyarados and a 0 IV Gyarados, then it's this one. But it gets even better. On my way to try and get back to Grass 10, I have another fight where my decisions literally don't matter. But this is just the nature of the haul. A single Pokemon cannot cover the entire Pokedex. The damage done to the timer is severe. I do eventually get back to Grass 10, but I'm almost 7 hours in now. Honestly, I probably do have time to go again, but my patience is running really thin. This Venusaur set is a really good lesson for anyone unfamiliar with Gen 4 AI. It looks like it should be quite threatening with Frenzy Plant, but the Gen 4 AI will never actually use Frenzy Plant at full HP. This is nice because it means that Gyarados is at no risk of losing, so long as I don't blunder by using Outrage into a potential Protect, and so long as I don't risk the Bounce Miss. The rank 10 of the next type will actually also be level 30, the same as Gyarados. As you might expect, this makes the threat list quite a lot longer. This is Bug. There are a few concerns with Bug. First up, if you think back to Beganium when we talked about Counter, we know that Counter is an issue for Gyarados. Well, Bug has 2 Pokemon with Counter and both will easily survive my moves, Sizzle and Fortress. Luckily, the solution is simple. Unlike Meganium, they don't do much damage without Counter, so I can just bring Flamethrower on Gyarados even if I have no special attack investment. Yanmega is quite scary. Funnily, with speed investment, Gyarados is actually faster than it. However, I must not use Bounce on turn 1, as if Yanmega gets a speed boost, it can actually flinch me to death with Air Slash. So the first turn must actually be Icy Wind, which sets up the bounce kill on turn 2. Vespiquen is also quite annoying. This is just another RNG matchup with Bright Powder. Pinsir is surprisingly not a threat so long as I outplay the smart AI to prevent it from using the move Giga Impact. The worst bug type by miles is actually Cypher. It's Focus Sash, and if it uses Swords Dance into Air Relays with the ability Technician, Gyarados will faint. Yeah, that's pretty embarrassing bulk. It's a 0 IV Gyarados moment. I have to use Icy Wind into Bounce, and I must not miss either of these moves. Focus Sash also does not save me here. Cypher has the move Quick Attack and will use it at 1 HP. There's one final quite surprising threat. Venomoth can have Shield Dust, which prevents Icy Wind from dropping its speed. It also runs Choice Specs and it's naturally faster than Gyarados. I would love to run Dragon Dance for Venomoth, but I can't. Flamethrower, Icy Wind, Bounce and Waterfall are the core moves, so I'll just have to hit it with Bounce if it shows up. Oh, okay. When it shows up then. Fortunately, Gyarados never gets unlucky. Rank 9 is up, and it's Armaldo. This is a really nice matchup. It's as easy as it gets. The follow-up might surprise you. I'm not actually clicking rank 10 Bug here. Rank 10 Bug is very scary, and I don't want to do it. So, instead, I'm just going to click the next type. The 14th type is where I'm going to unveil the final haul mechanic. Up until now, I've been ignoring something. You might have noticed that I've been playing at level 30 whenever possible. Well, why? It is true that level 30 is the lowest level you can enter, but why not enter at level 50 or level 60? I don't want to bore anyone by talking about the intricacies of the damage formula in Generation 4, but basically, lower level Pokemon do more damage to each other. In fact, the floor step function in the level calculation also adds a load of complexity. A lot of experienced Nuzlockers already know this, but not all level ups are equal. In particular, if your level ends with a 0, 3, 5 or 8, you'll get a significant boost in the amount of damage you can deal. The opposite of true of levels ending in 2, 4, 7 and 9. Using a level 30 Gyarados has been optimal for a number of reasons. First up, since Gyarados is almost always ordinary offensive, I want to maximise my own damage. But also this has been optimal for the way that the haul scales the levels of opponents. The summary is, I get a bigger advantage if I'm at a lower level. For example, the very first opponent you'll face in the haul, rank 1, if I'm level 30, I'll face a level 14. But if I'm level 100, I'll be facing a level 70. Obviously, 30 versus 14 is way more unfair than 100 versus 70. At various points already in the video, I've had to go to a higher level. Viewers paying close attention might know that Gyarados learns Dragon Dance at level 44, but my Dragon Dance sets were actually level 45. Well, this was why. I do slightly more damage at level 45 to the enemies. Okay, cool, but why does this matter? Well, we're about to see. It's time for type 14. Flying. Flying is a dangerous type. A lot of old enemies are back now. Cypher, Yanmega, Zapdos, Staraptor, Articuno. There are also some horrible new matchups, such as Skarmory and Dragonite. Flying rank 10 is going to have opponents at level 30. and these matchups are really hard to solve without single use TMs. I'm actually kind of stuck. Take Skarmory for example, it's faster than me. Yes, you heard that right. I don't even 2-hit KO with Thunderbolt after using Icy Wind first. Or how about Zapdos? It's also faster than me now. Even if I was faster, my best move against it would be Ice Fang, and it can live 2 Ice Fangs. Staraptor is similar. Icy Wind and Thunderbolt won't kill it, even after the Brave Bird recoil from turn 1. The best moveset I can field looks like it is indeed Waterfall, Icy Wind, Ice Fang and Thunderbolt with a Focus Sash. That said, is pretty good actually. I have a high chance of getting through flying. I also have a very high chance of losing against some of these top threats though. The solution is to abuse the way that the Hall's level scaling works. For earlier types, being as low level as possible was optimal. However, in later rounds the quadratic nature of this relationship starts to drop off and gives advantages back to higher level Pokemon. There's a big target in particular, which is level 40. At level 40 I would face level 39 rank 10s. And suddenly, against Staraptor, Zapdos and Skarmory, these all become matchups I'm favoured to win instead of favoured to lose. This one level really does make a massive difference. As another fun fact here, Battle Hall will never actually let you face your own Pokemon. This is fantastic news because of course an enemy Gyarados would be horrendous to face with Gyarados. I spent a lot of time preparing for flying, but in the end it turns out to be something of an anticlimax. I never ended up facing any of these potentially deadly threats. There are only 3 types left now, but the level of optimization is only going to get even more unhinged. It's time for Steel. The threat list for Steel has already been covered in all earlier types. They're just even bigger problems now. Just like in Bug, I absolutely must run Flamethrower for Fortress and Scizor. I also must run Earthquake for Metagross, Bastiodon and a few of their friends. I also need Waterfall for floaty steals like Bronzong. In fact, this isn't even enough. I also need a Choice Band. Choice Band Flamethrower sounds like a meme, and I guess perhaps it is, but I wouldn't be changing moves in these matchups anyway. I also can't do this at level 40. On Type 15, level 40 would also mean level 40 opponents. I must go up all the way to level 60 to maintain the best possible advantage I can have over Skarmory. You might be wondering about the 4th move, and I actually just messed up here. When I was preparing this set, I ran a few mental calculations and I thought that I did need Fire Blast to beat Skarmory. It turns out that Waterfall is easy enough to beat Skarmory anyway, so this 4th move slot is just wasted. Although I'm honestly not sure what I'd run here anyway. I get extremely scared by rank 6 Bastiodon when it activates Quick Claw. I am lucky this wasn't Smart AI and therefore it wasn't a guaranteed Thunder. But luckily Blizzard does not freeze. After seeing this Bastiodon, I definitely can't rest for the remainder of Steel, as resting would put Bastiodon back in the pool of selectable Pokemon. I run into Shieldon and then Wormadam. These are 2 free wins. And then rank 9 and 10 are Steelix and then Scizor respectively. These are also 2 free wins due to my preparation. At this point I'm so deep into the run, and have such little time left, that this is definitely going to be the final Gyarados attempt. So, as no real surprise, Fire will be last, which means that Dragon is next. Dragon is a weird type to prepare for because it's so small. I'm actually going to run the exact same set as I did in Grass with Choice Band Ice Fang and Choice Band Outrage. Gyarados is going to be slower than so much anyway that it's actually better to give up on speed and just run max HP. I would love to run Focus Sash, but I can't. Shelgon is actually a really big problem in Dragon. I would much rather one-shot Shelgon and never get hit by its swagger. The rest of the matchups are all pretty much knife fights. I kill them in one hit and they will have one chance to kill me in one hit. There's a saying about bringing a gun to a knife fight. I feel like bringing Gyarados to a knife fight is more like bringing a spoon. The level is almost completely irrelevant for Dragon. It's not going to make any difference to what I kill or what kills me. So I'm just going in at 40. As early as rank 4 I actually start to sweat. Vibrava can simply win with a crit here. The next opponents are Dragonair, Shelgon and Altaria. I have to rest after that. The next nearest neighbour to Altaria is Dragonite. And because Dragon is such a small type, the nearest neighbour effect is really strong here. So I rest to avoid Dragonite and then I enter rank 9. Okay, this can happen. The rest trick improves my odds of dodging stuff, but it doesn't guarantee anything. It's still just probability. Dragonite does not end up actually critting me, and I decide against resting. I don't want to face it again. The scariest 2 dragons are Salamence and Garchomp. Salamence because I have to use Ice Fang, and guess who shows up at rank 10? Yep. My fear here is the ability Sandveil. There's a 20% chance to miss. Luckily, Dragon Gyarados is on form. That means we only have Fire left. I'm not going to big anything up for dramatic purposes here. Fire is kind of easy. There's a reason why I've left that as the final type. Instead of designing a Gyarados set that's going to be good against fire, I'm going to be designing a Gyarados set that is good against Argenta 2, at match 170. The set I build for this will also automatically be good against fire. For the gold fight, Argenta can bring any Group 4 Pokemon. This is obviously a massive list. The simplest approach here is also the correct one. The best item in the haul by far is of course the Focus Sash. As for my moves, I definitely want Waterfall and Earthquake. I should also run Bounce, and lastly I want Dragon Dance. And I'm going to do max investment in attack and speed. Most importantly though, I'm going to do this at level 100. Level 100 is the biggest advantage I can get over Fire rank 10, because Argenta's level will always match mine. The rank 10 Fire ends up being Magmortar. It's a Lax and Sense set, but I don't get any terrible luck here. I still have not actually faced Bug 10, and I never will. This is going to be the type that Argenta 2 is going to replace. It was a lot of hours and a lot of effort to get this far, but unfortunately I have absolutely no control over what Argenta is going to bring. The list of threats is kind of simple. Basically anything that I mentioned in this video about something that might have a chance to beat Gyarados will obviously have a chance if Argenta brings it, and probably a much higher chance. The true nightmare would definitely be Meganium, but I'm mostly just praying that it's not any Ghost or Electric type. I'd like to avoid Water and Dark, but I'm quite confident in this Gyarados set. The very worst case scenario I can think of still involves me having a potential win via Gyarados getting a bounce paralysis. And against everything I can be faster than after Dragon Dance, I also have the option of going for a Waterfall Flinch. Regardless, this is going to be Gyarados' one shot at gold, so let's see what Argenta brings. Unfortunately, this is a near guaranteed loss. Electivire is faster than Gyarados. You might think I can win with Dragon Dance into an Earthquake, but Electivire also has the move Quick Attack, which it's always going to use on turn 2 to kill me after its electric move activates my Focus Sash. A 31 IV Gyarados would be able to cleanly kill this with an Earthquake. Unfortunately, 0 IV Gyarados is not guaranteed to kill this with an Earthquake. And even that would need Gyarados to avoid the paralysis from discharge. Is it over? Well, there's one more detail actually. Electivire has a Life Orb. And with the 10% damage from Life Orb, Gyarados is guaranteed to get this kill. Among all possible Pokemon that Argenta could bring, Electivire is actually one of the best matchups Gyarados has. Against all odds. Against all logic. What did we learn? I'm not sure. I think 0 IV Gyarados is terrible, so use Garchomp if you want to get gold. It took me way too long to prepare all these sets, so I'm linking some of my notes below. If you follow Argenta's philosophy on using your favourites, I have someone to recommend. Follow Cecil on Twitch. He's trying to get gold print with dramatically worse Pokemon than Gyarados. If you're from the future, you might even be able to watch his video on it. If you aren't from the future, I hope you have gained some appreciation for what top level haul gameplay actually looks like. This is an underrated facility, and it's much better than Ironmon. I hid that opinion at the end so I don't get lynched for it. Regardless, see you later.